The playground had always been a bit of a local legend, the kind of place that parents warn their kids to stay away from. Abandoned for years, its rusting swings and broken slides cast long, eerie shadows in the moonlight. Naturally, this made it the perfect place for me and my friends to explore on a dare. Me and my friends were curious and thrill-seeking. We'd all heard the stories, of course. Tales of kids who went there and never came back, of ghostly figures seen swinging in the moonlight, and of eerie laughter echoing through the empty park. But we were too old to believe in ghost stories. Or so we thought. It was a chilly autumn night when we decided to check it out. We met up at the edge of the woods, the playground barely visible through the trees. The wind rustled the leaves, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying foliage. Our flashlights cut through the darkness as we made our way down the overgrown path. "This place is creepy as hell," Jake muttered, shining his light on the twisted remains of a merry-go-round. It creaked and groaned in the wind, the sound sending chills down my spine. "Don't be such a wuss," Sarah teased, though I could see the unease in her eyes. "It's just an old playground." Mike was the first to step through the rusty gate, pushing it open with a loud screech. "Come on, guys. Let's see what all the fuss is about." We followed him inside, our flashlights dancing over the dilapidated equipment. The place was even creepier up close. The swings hung limply from their chains, the slide was covered in rust and graffiti, and the monkey bars looked like they'd collapse if you so much as touched them. An unsettling silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the occasional creak of metal and the whisper of the wind. "This is where they say the kids disappeared," Jake said, pointing to the swings. "They were swinging 1 minute and gone the next." "Yeah, right," I scoffed, though the thought made my stomach churn. "Let's split up and see if we can find anything interesting. We'll meet back here in 20 minutes. We all nodded and went our separate ways, our flashlights casting long, eerie shadows as we explored. I headed towards the slide, running my hand over the rough, rusted surface. It felt colder than it should have, and I shivered despite myself. I heard a faint rustling behind me and turned, half expecting to see one of my friends. But there was no one there. Just the empty playground and the darkness pressing in from all sides. I shook my head, telling myself I was being paranoid, and moved on. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I kept glancing over my shoulder, but there was nothing but shadows. I tried to focus on the task at hand, shining my flashlight into every nook and cranny, but my mind kept wandering back to the stories. 20 minutes passed, and I made my way back to the swings. Jake was already there, looking pale and anxious. "Did you find anything?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Jake shook his head. "No, but I heard something. Like, whispering. And I swear I saw someone moving near the monkey bars." Before I could respond, Sarah and Mike joined us, both looking equally unsettled. "Okay, this place is seriously creepy," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "Let's just get out of here." We all agreed, but as we turned to leave, we realized something was wrong. The gate we'd come through was gone. In its place was a solid wall of darkness, impenetrable and suffocating. "What the hell?" Mike muttered, his voice tinged with panic. "We came through here, right?" "Yeah," I said, my heart pounding in my chest. "It's like the path just disappeared." We turned back to the playground, and that's when we saw them. Figures standing in the shadows, watching us. They looked like us, same clothes, same faces, but there was something off about them. Their eyes were empty, hollow, and their movements were jerky and unnatural. "What the hell are those things?" Jake whispered, taking a step back. "I don't know," I said, my mind racing. "But we need to get out of here. Now." We backed away, keeping our flashlights trained on the figures. They didn't move, just stood there, watching. It wasn't until we turned to run that they sprang into action, moving with an unnatural speed and grace. We scattered, each of us running in a different direction. I could hear the others shouting, their voices growing fainter as we spread out across the playground. I ran towards the merry-go-round, hoping to lose my pursuer in the maze of rusted equipment. I could hear footsteps behind me, getting closer. I ducked under the monkey bars and crouched behind the slide, my heart pounding in my ears. The footsteps stopped, and I held my breath, praying they wouldn't find me. "Alex," a voice whispered, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was Sarah, but when I peeked around the slide, I saw her standing with one of the figures. Her eyes were empty, just like theirs. "Sarah?" I called out, my voice trembling. She didn't respond, just stared at me with that vacant expression. The figure next to her stepped forward, and I realized with a jolt that it was me. Or at least, it looked like me. "Come with us," it said, its voice a distorted echo of my own. "You belong here." I turned and ran, not caring where I was going as long as it was away from them. I stumbled through the darkness, my flashlight flickering and dying in my hand. The playground seemed to stretch on forever, the equipment looming like twisted sentinels in the night. I didn't stop until I reached the edge of the woods, the dark wall still blocking our way out. I could hear the others calling my name, but their voices sounded strange, distorted. I knew I couldn't trust them, not anymore. I crouched behind a tree, trying to catch my breath. The figures were closing in, their empty eyes glowing in the darkness. I had to find a way out, but the more I thought about it, the more trapped I felt. And then I saw it. A small, worn key lying in the dirt at my feet. It looked old, ancient even, and I knew instinctively that it was the key to our escape. I grabbed it and turned to run, but the figures were already there, surrounding me. "Give us the key," the one that looked like Jake said, its voice hollow and echoing. "You can't leave." I clutched the key tightly, backing away. "No. I'm getting out of here." They moved closer, their faces twisted in expressions of anger and desperation. I turned and ran, the key clutched tightly in my hand. The figures chased me, their footsteps echoing in the darkness. I reached the merry-go-round and climbed onto it, the old metal creaking under my weight. The figures closed in, their hands reaching out to grab me. I fumbled with the key, my hands shaking, and found the small, hidden lock in the center of the merry-go-round. I turned the key, and the world around me seemed to shift. The figures froze, their eyes widening in shock. The darkness began to lift, and I could see the path through the woods reappear. I jumped off the merry-go-round and ran towards the path, the figures dissolving into shadows behind me. I burst through the trees, my breath coming in ragged gasps, and found myself back on the road. The others were there, looking just as shaken and terrified as I felt. We didn't say a word, just started walking, putting as much distance between us and the playground as possible. We never talked about what happened that night, but the memory of it haunted us. The playground was demolished a few months later, replaced by a new housing development. But I could still hear the creak of the swings and the echo of ghostly laughter whenever I passed by. I knew the playground's twisted reality still existed, somewhere just beyond the edges of our world, waiting for its next victims. And I knew that we'd narrowly escaped becoming permanent residents of that haunted place.